Hey, discerning listeners, 90 Day Fiancé. Let's see what happens.
What happened yesterday, Andrei met with mom and like talked to her about how she behaved at the housewarming party, and like they basically got into it.
I get both sides. I think where Andrei has gone wrong is being disrespectful towards mom.
Yeah. Funny because he says the same thing about her.
But at the end of the day, she's just trying to be a mom.
Okay, so I don't know where this is headed exactly, but this is different than I thought what the sisters would be saying, because I thought that they were all on the same page with regards to Charlie and the mom. If we remember in that first episode, the mom was trying to get everyone to be okay with Charlie and inviting to the birthday party, and the three sisters were saying, no, we're drawing a boundary because of his issues and his drinking, and if he stops drinking and goes into recovery, then we'll come. But until then, no. And then Andrei actually stepped in later as the conversation continued, and I think maybe someone went after him. So really the leaders of the pushback was from the sisters, and Andrei was just agreeing with what the sisters were saying. Then, for whatever reason, the mom and Andrei had a talk, which I'm like, why would it be those two? It should be others. And now the sisters seemingly are pulling back a little bit. I'm not really quite sure what's happening.
So if we go to mom's party, are you guys coming?
What do you mean?
Obviously, we are in the same situation as you with Charlie and creating boundaries. However, I'm just doing it for mom. It's her 60th, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like they still understand that it's important to draw a boundary, or they're still from that place. And certainly the other two sisters could decide something different. They could be like, well, we want to go to the party because it just feels like we're really harming our mom. She's getting pretty upset, so we're going to go to the party. We're still drawing boundary with Charlie, and he'll be there, but, it's just a party, so it's not the end of the world. And, okay, but you could see it as a movement back towards homeostasis, where everyone is just doing the normal things and they're in their normal configuration as a routine, as a system, as a structure that involves not only Charlie and everyone else being okay with not only Charlie still drinking and no one is drawing any boundaries with that, and maybe they're looking the other way or trying to drink with him or enabling it or whatever. So this could be the slippery slope back to that old homeostasis, that old equilibrium that they had. In addition to that, now at the top of my head, it could be moving back towards scapegoating Andrei, because they said earlier, the sisters were like, well, the issue is that Andrei is being disrespectful. And remember that my hypothesis about the family system is that it has a lot of issues, and we could probably take a guess and say that addiction and substance abuse problems is a part of that, but those could also be symptoms of a larger problem in the family that might even go back to when the parents got divorced in the first place, Chuck and the mom. And that their scapegoating of Andrei was a way for them to avoid their own pathology, to band together against a common enemy, to bring them closer together, which did work, right? Charlie and the family were all together against Andrei, and they also and then the dad was sort of in between everybody. And so, as I was talking about last time, it's interesting that as Charlie becomes the scapegoat because of his drinking, then Andrei is now not the scapegoat anymore. He is in alignment. They're all on the same team, Andrei and the three sisters. And I noted that, and I thought, like, well, it's interesting. It's notable because all of a sudden now Andrei isn't the constant enemy that, especially those two sisters are just determined to make Andrei out to be this horrific, horrible human being. And they now have Charlie to do that too. And now that it seems maybe the mom has effectively guilt-tripped the sisters into coming back, because we could imagine that this issue with guilt-tripping and the mom's issues have been going on their entire life. So for Andrei, it's much easier for him to detect it and to draw a boundary. Plus, he's pretty good at standing his ground. The sisters might not be able to do that, as plus it's their mom, and Charlie's their brother, so it's going to be harder for them. And so maybe they're heading back, and as a result, the whole family needs a scapegoat, and so they're back to scapegoating Andrei.
Changed because you guys were pretty set on your decision.
If he's going to be there, so be it. I'm not going to allow him to keep me from doing things that I actually want to do.
Okay, that's totally fine, actually. They could see it that way. It's just like, look, we're still drawing a boundary with Charlie, but we don't want him to ruin our entire lives. I want to go to my mom's birthday, so I'll go. But I'm going to make sure we don't fall back into the old pattern. Now, that could be something that they're just telling themselves because they want to go back to the old homeostasis. We tend to want to return to our old equilibriums. They're familiar. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on them from the family to do so, at least from the mom, maybe others, I don't know. But it's not inherently a problem for them to reconsider that. Now, what I would hope is that they wouldn't impose that on Libby and on Andrei. You know, everyone should be allowed to draw the boundaries with a difficult situation in the way that they want to at that time.
So like all of your words went to and you're dishonoring and disrespecting your own word by putting yourself in that environment and subjecting yourself to that.
No.
Yeah, so I don't think Libby is, strictly wrong, but it wouldn't be advised to tell them that in that way anyway. There's nothing wrong with her saying, so I think what's happening for Libby is she's feeling a little hung out to dry and out of the loop or something, and also threatened because, well, now if I draw a boundary with Charlie and me and Andrei draw a boundary with Charlie and we don't go to the birthday party, if we make that choice, we'll be looked at as the enemies because you're going along with it. And we had agreed that we were going to hold the line here because remember, what happens when we give in on these things, eventually bad things happen to us all. So she could certainly say something along those lines or say, I feel sad or hurt that you're not following the agreement that we came to because it felt good to have all of us holding the line because if it's just going to be me and Andrei, I guess I'm going to give in too because I can't do this alone. We have to do it together as a team. There's so many other ways we could be doing this. If I were in their shoes, what I would consider doing is saying, Mom, we will absolutely celebrate your birthday, but not with Charlie. So we will throw a different birthday party for you, but Charlie won't be there. So, why not that? But it's so hard to think about things like that. And of course, the mom might have some pushback, but if it's really about her birthday, then she would be fine with that, right? She should be, oh, well, I get 2 birthday parties, right? But that isn't, I think, what the mom is pushing for. I think she, at least, the general hypothesis for this kind of behavior from the mom based on the situation is that she is the ringleader of getting everyone back to the original homeostasis in which everyone sweeps their problems under the rug.
My sisters seem to be on my husband's side at the housewarming party. The only thing I can think of is maybe my mom has been chirping in their ears and got to their head a little bit, and they totally changed their mind without even having a reason why they did it or what their motive was.
Right, 2 things. She's saying essentially what I was saying, that their mom is being more guilt-trippy, more pressuring, and eventually they just gave in. But the other thing she said, which provides a different perspective from what I've been saying, is that Libby is saying my sisters were on Andrei's side, which implies that Andrei was the one that was drawing the boundary and the sisters were agreeing to that, which would be weird, right? Because that I can't imagine the sisters going along with anything Andrei did, particularly something like that. So I wonder if it's just a wording that she's using, or Andrei, given the fact that he is essentially an outsider to the family, is better able to see the woods for the trees and say, like, look, we got to draw a boundary. And the rest and some other members of the family are like, we can do that. And then they go along with his suggestion.
I just think you're taking it to another level that
You are
doesn't
taking
have
it to another level, and you're doing it really aggressively, though.
Do you think Charlie's just going to attack you?
He has before.
Yes, I do. Have you not been that? They were there, and I'm guessing they were there on other instances as well. Yes, I think Charlie. There's a chance that he will attack Andrei. Yes. Did you not see the violence that happened between the two of them? Now, if I remember right, Andrei was also a pretty big instigator in that violence. In fact, you could even argue he was more responsible, but it's hard for me to know because it was all kind of edited. But so, yeah, this makes me worried that we're going to go back to the old homeostasis in which all the family problems, of which we probably only know 1% of really, are being swept under the rug, and they have a very elaborate structure in this family to make that happen, not only just behaviorally, but also to get inside everyone's mind. And then they will need a scapegoat to distract them, and they will identify Andrei, and then we're right back to that ridiculousness.
Why wouldn't he? He sends me like all of these awful text messages all the time about my husband and how he's this and that. Yes. So if you're saying this via text, what would you say it to me in person? Like, I'm not going to subject myself to that for a freak.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't even think that was possible, but yeah, of course that's possible. So Charlie, she's saying, is sending all these awful texts to her about Andrei. Now, maybe there's some nuance to that. Maybe she's provoking him, but we could absolutely see Charlie intoxicated, sending, people will do that when they're drunk. They will send texts that they wouldn't otherwise. So, yeah, of course. If he's still in this headspace about and just fixated on it, because, for his, who knows? But based on this hypothesis, there's a chance that for Charlie, he's so ashamed of himself that he is doing whatever he can to get out of that. And one of the avenues that he believes is available to him that was working in the past was, if I can get the family against Andrei again, then I'm off the hook. In fact, I'm kind of the hero because I'm the primary antagonist to Andrei, and thus I will be celebrated in this family and not scapegoated.
I still am quite baffled at my sister's responses. I don't have a problem with forgiving someone and forgetting, but if this particular person keeps hurting my husband and doesn't show any sign of remorse or change in their behavior, then no way would I subject myself to that. That's foolish. And I feel
Yeah, she has a pretty healthy point of view there, because it's not just that, look, until he stops doing this and he shows remorse for having done it in the past, then I'd be stupid to walk into the lion's den, right? But that's what it's like to live and be enmeshed in a family with alcoholism or some other addiction or some other issue like this, is that you end up continually trying to make it work, sweeping it under the rug, negotiating, making up for, enabling, doing everything you can. But the fact remains is that that individual has a problem that is out of their control, let alone everyone else's control, right? So there's no way that anything will change until that person enters treatment and is sober for an extended period of time. And then, because in the beginning of treatment, in the beginning of recovery, you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to remain sober, and it's hard. And there's often relapses, this kind of thing, and sometimes extended relapses. But then down the line, eventually the individual will get to a stable place where they're sober for a while. Then they can actually start to grow emotionally, start to take inventory of their life and what they've done in the past, and actually learn from that and see it through new eyes, and actually go to their family members and friends and people and say, I'm sorry for those things. That's way down the line, right? For example, if Charlie decided to stop drinking tomorrow and go to AA meetings, he still would not be out of the woods, right? There would be years before potentially he would be someone you could depend on as someone that's not going to be a problem behaviorally. So yeah, her perspective is reasonable. The sisters are fine. If they want to go to the party, that's also fine. But it's just a hard situation, right? And they, I hope, would not attack each other as each of them is trying to navigate a difficult situation. And certainly I hope that this isn't the first sign that we're returning back to an Andrei scapegoat homeostasis.
like they're going to come out of that party and they're not going to feel good about themselves.
I think you're making a mistake, and I think Andrei is forcing you to make the mistake, and you
can
didn't even
think
see
whatever
it.
you want.
My goodness. I mean, I didn't think it would happen that fast. I heard hints of it, but I think we're right back there. I think we're absolutely right back to Andrei is the scapegoat. It was just, wasn't it just last episode or 2 episodes ago that Andrei and the 3 sisters were totally in alignment. They were defending him. They were all on the same side. There was no indication that Andrei was on the outs. They felt like they were supporting each other. They were all equally upset about the situation towards the mom. Andrei wasn't the spokesperson at that point. And although, isn't it interesting, though? So who knows what's really happening? It's a reality TV show. But if we just looked at it from what we're presented, that the family knew, or the mom knew, that if I can get alone with Andrei, I know if I can have a one-on-one meeting with him, I know that will go badly, or at least there's a chance it'll go badly, which it actually didn't go that badly. I thought Andrei, he didn't melt down or anything. He just said, look, I don't understand. You know, he was pretty pointed in a way that I don't think was, but it wasn't out of line, really. Anyway, so if the mom knew consciously or subconsciously that if she could get Andrei alone, then once that was over, she could go to the sisters and say, you wouldn't believe the way that Andrei treated me. And that would fall right back into an old pattern for them. It would suck the girls back in, and the mom would be able to get the family back to its homeostasis. Not because it's the mom's a jerk face, but because I think she's operating on the assumption that if she can get everyone to accept Charlie and not reject him for his drinking and his behavior, then everything will be better and she will be a good mom. But of course, that's not necessarily true.
I feel like you and Andrei are slowly like distancing yourselves from everybody in the
You're
family.
like building an island.
I wonder why. Who knows what's really happening? But if this show is representative of what their family is actually like, I mean, what's the benefit of not isolate? You know, what's the benefit of being with these people? Like, what value do you get out of having a relationship with your family of origin this way? Like, now they work with Chuck. We haven't even seen Chuck this season. You know, from my understanding, Andrei is working very closely with Chuck. So now I wonder if Chuck will start to get back into the family, and then Chuck will accept Charlie back into the business, and then we're back to everyone getting rid of Andrei. And yeah, I don't know. If that happens, I guess I'll comment on it, but it will feel similar to Angela season to season in that I feel like I'm just saying we're seeing the same thing, and I say the same thing, which isn't extremely gratifying to me. But it does reflect how these things work. I mean, families, systems, individuals, and their issues tend to remain, in fact, get worse without proper treatment.
It's just such a show all the time. And it's like, I can't get done coping with one situation before there's a new one in my.
Interesting. I don't doubt that. It certainly seems that way to me. And I applaud her for not scapegoating Andrei in this moment, seemingly anyway, that for her in her family now and maybe throughout her life, it's always been crisis after crisis after crisis. And there are families like that, particularly enmeshed families, which they seem to exhibit signs of, indicated by the fact that they all work together, that they're highly reactive to each other, they spend a lot of time together, they know what's going on in each other's lives. Now, of course, what's the difference between being close? Because, you know, some of the things I rattled off there are just indicative of close families. What's the difference between close and enmeshed? Well, enmeshed is you're forced to be close, and there's an intolerance for difference. There's an intolerance for people doing something that is a little counter. So for Libby to be with someone from another country, for Libby to draw a boundary with Charlie, for anyone to draw boundaries, you know, like there's for Andrei to get involved in the family, like there's an intolerance for, you know, if you don't follow the family rules as dictated by us or by the mom or something, then you are an enemy, and we will do everything we can, guilt-tripping-wise, to eliminate that in you. So families that are actually close in a healthy way, when one person wants to do a different thing, the family might be a little concerned, but they will allow for that because they love their family member. They're not desperately close. You know, enmeshed families are close not out of internal desire for closeness, but because they're desperate. They need to be close, or else something very terrible will happen to them. Whereas, you know, actually close families, they choose to be close, and when it doesn't work for them, they won't be close, right? But then they'll be close. I hope that makes sense. So enmeshed families tend to have that because one, triangulation tends to swirl around in the family system, and I think we're even seeing an example of that now. And because of the lack of differentiation, no one and no group of people are stopping and thinking, okay, what's really best for us as individuals, as a family? Is this really necessary? No one stops and thinks about that. It's all just react. And from an individual's point of view, it would be like, I feel like I'm constantly dealing with crisis after crisis.
My family. And now it's Andrei. He's creating a wall around him and my sister. And quite frankly, I feel stupid that I'm kind of surprised by it.
Yeah, we are fully back in. I mean, I don't know how long ago it was, but it couldn't have been that long ago when she herself, without Andrei's influence, independent of Andrei, she was directly yelling at the mom saying, we are not going to take this anymore. It's not that we don't love our brother Charlie, but while he is using, he will harm himself and us. It always happens. So I am drawing a boundary with Charlie, mom. It was totally between the mom and her. At no point was she saying, well, Andrei convinced me of that. And I don't even think that was the case. But now we're right back to it, where Andrei is holding the line that she was holding. She might have even created it in the past. I don't know. And she has changed her mind. And now, even though Andrei's doing what she was herself doing not that long prior to this moment, Andrei is drawing an island around Libby, and he's nefariously trying to drive a wedge through this family. I mean, wow.
I think that by you guys not coming, it's then creating a bigger issue than what it has to be. What do you have to lose by going?
Wow. It would be, if you're Libby, it would be so hard to hold the line. It would be so hard. I think the only option would be either fall right back into it or actually just disengage from the entire family, where it's like, that's the only choice that you would have based on what we're seeing. You either just give in and say, okay, fine, I'll go along with it. I know where this is headed, and it's not going to be good for me or anyone else, but okay, I give in, I give up. Or you're just like, I'm done. And just imagine that choice. Those are two awful choices. To us, one choice is very palatable, but if you're actually Libby, it's awful to be disconnected from your family in that way. So just imagine that. And that's the conundrum of a family dealing with addiction and ongoing massive amounts of system pathology that has existed going back generations. It's very difficult. I'm sure some of you have dealt with that and are dealing with that.
Andrei has his green card renewal coming up. And if he has anything on his record that could jeopardize his green card getting renewed again, like say, God forbid they see.
Yeah, that's a factor. But I would hope that Libby would just be able to say, I'll remind you of what you were yelling at mom the other day, which is until Charlie gets sober, it's not good for us to be close to him. We want to protect ourselves and our kids, our families from Charlie and his toxicity. So that's why I'm doing it. I agree with what you were saying, what you were yelling at mom earlier. That's the issue. So she's bringing up this other issue of just like, the green card thing, which is a factor for sure, but that can't be the only reason, right? Because then it sort of spreads the blame out. It could be interpreted as like, well, Andrei is also a hothead, which he is, but I think their position is that Charlie is generally toxic. Andrei is occasionally has issues, as triggered by Charlie, I think most of all, right?
Each other and they get into a fight or something and it's reported, that could go against his green card.
Does he feel like he's just going to fly off the handle?
Were you guys there last year?
Right. So that's how I thought it'd be interpreted. That Libby thinks she's bringing up a good point, but she doesn't understand the landscape. She is on a landscape where the system is determined to twist anything against Andrei. And so by presenting that, there's a wiggle room there, which I didn't think I would see right away. It's just so interesting that I could predict it so easily. You know what I mean? I'm not patting myself on the back. It's more just because I feel like I was being a little harsh. I felt like I was being like, well, slow down. I mean, the sisters, they're dealing with a difficult situation. Who knows what will actually happen down the line? And when I was predicting it, I was like, well, we might be heading towards a Andrei being scapegoated situation again. I didn't think it would happen right away. I thought it'd be weeks from now, but it happened like real time. We saw it happening real time right before our eyes. Now, I want to be clear. The sisters are not jerk faces. They are a product of their system, if I'm understanding it right, which is impossible for me to know. And in all likelihood, I don't understand the system because I understand systems enough to understand I would have to assess them much more thoroughly to understand what's really happening. But if I am reading it at least somewhat close, the sisters don't wake up in the morning and say, like, we're going to be like weird and random. We're going to do totally random things that aren't going to make any logical sense. One week we're going to be this way. The other week we're going to be that way. People don't do that. When they grow up in an enmeshed family with a lot of pathology, they're overwhelmed with their fusion and their lack of differentiation. And it might look like they're coming from a rational place or a place that generates from within, but they might just be completely reactive. And they've always been that way, and they've never been given an opportunity to stop and think like, what do I want? What's good for me? What's good for my family? They're just like reactive because that's what they learned. And that would be my suspicion. If it's not that, then it's faked. If this isn't an enmeshed family dealing with someone with addiction in the way that I've been portraying it, they are very effective at faking a family going through that.
At the barbecue,
Yes, I was,
when
but
my
I-
husband almost fought my brother,
But I
and like
also-
we almost fought Megan, like let's not forget about that. It's not
Right,
worth
but do you-
jeopardizing your green card to live in America.
I don't see that
and
happening
to possibly
at
not
mom's
see
birthday
me
dinner
as
at a
sister.
restaurant.
Yeah, a complete denial. Like the sister's like, I don't see that happening. Why? What would stop it from happening again? It happened in the past, and it wasn't an anomaly. The conflict, the behavior, I'm guessing way beyond what we've seen on the show, that wasn't completely abnormal. So that, the fact that sister's like, I can't see that happening. I'm like, how come you can't see that? It absolutely could. Can you, especially if Charlie is fixated and texting her, like Andrei is a jerk face, all this kind of stuff. What do you think's going to happen? And Andrei doesn't back down. So Charlie and Andrei in the same room, that'd be a disaster. There's been violence between other members in this family where they're all just going nuts. Well, between Libby and remember when they're on that boat and thing? It's just like, yes, there have been multiple instances of violence or threatened violence at restaurants, in people's homes. So what would make this situation different? If anything, there'd be a greater likelihood of violence happening because Charlie, from what they're saying, is not in treatment. I'm going to take a guess and say that if he was, the sisters would be mentioning that. They'd be like, no, you don't understand. Charlie's in treatment. They haven't mentioned that. So I'm guessing that that's not happening. So the chance that Charlie will be using in a context like that is almost for sure, because one, when you're using every day, use every day, but two, when you're dealing with a high stress situation like that, people tend to drink. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Charlie doesn't even show up because he's so intoxicated because of the stress of the situation. So I don't know, but I'm completely speculating based on very little information. So I could have all that wrong. All right, that does it for that episode in which I react to the show. And, that's what came out of my face as I watched. And everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.